Hey everybody, I'm Dan. This is Drew, and we're back with another episode of 4D. Today we're here to talk about Drew's modern deck because recently he traveled with some of the other guys down to Denver and managed to take down the PTQ there to send Drew back to the Pro Tour.
Yep. Yeah, I won the Denver PTQ with the same list that I played at the Salt Lake PTQ, where I got second, so wasn't able to close that PTQ, but got it this time.
Awesome. So it's a blue, white, red deck, right?
Yeah, they call it mid-range. I actually don't really like the moniker, but it's just what people call it. It's basically an aggro control deck. You're playing Geist of St. Traps, Snapcaster Mages, Restoration Angels.
And if you stop there, you think we were playing standard.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, oh, this deck's kind of like Delver, right? Only you add red for some pretty good cards,
which we're going to cover here in just a minute because we're going to go over the deck list and show it to you.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll break down the deck, go over what's in the deck and everything, and I can talk about some of the individual card choices. Some of them, you're automatically jamming 4 of in the deck, but there's some where you're playing a few copies. So
okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and get right to it.
Okay, so here we have Drew's deck all laid out. We're going to go over the cards in the deck, talk about why they're in here, what impact they made on the deck, and different things like that. So we're going to start up here at the top. You have a pretty, what you expect from the land base, trying to smooth out your colors with your, island, mountain, sack lands, your shock lands that people have become familiar with through standard, a couple set of basics, which we'll talk about why there's a few in here. And just kind of what you expect from that type of full suite of lands to keep your 3-color deck running smooth. 2 lands we do want to talk about quickly are the Celestial Colonnade right here and the Tectonic Edge. So the Celestial Colonnade, a lot of people who aren't playing Modern may not be familiar with this land. So if you want to kind of tell us what it does and why you have it in here.
Yeah, so this is part of the cycle of the Worldway command lands. There's one for each of the allied colors. So there's red, green is Raging Ravine, blue, black is Creeping Tar Pit, green, white is Stirring Wildwood, and then what's the other allied color I'm missing? Red, black? Yeah, red, black is Violent Cloud Reaches. Oh, yeah. So the blue, white one is Celestial Colonnade. You pay 5 mana and turn this into a 4/4 flying creature with Vigilance. So the reason this is really good in these decks is for a couple reasons. One is it lets you play, like I have 25 lands in the deck, so it lets you play more lands than you might conventionally play in a deck like this, because even when you're getting mana flooded, you still have a land that's a threat, or possibly a blocker, depending on the situation that you're in.
Sure.
So that's one advantage of Colonnade, is it lets you play a few extra lands because you have the man lands, and you do end up actually winning a lot of games with Colonnade. You actually end up winning a lot of games through flying damage and then forcing through the last couple points with like a burn spell like Lightning Bolt or Lightning Helix.
And it has Vigilance, which is nice because you can, I need to make it a blocker. Do I need that mana later to cast maybe a Lightning Helix?
The blocking thing, like being able to attack and block in one turn, isn't really relevant because you need like 11 mana or something like that for that to happen. But the Vigilance is relevant, like say with Path to Exile. So like if you have like 6 mana and you go like activate Colonnade, attack for 4 before blocks are declared, you can add the mana, it's already attacking, and then path like a blocker or something like that. So the Vigilance is relevant in that sense. Also, sometimes when you have 2 mana, like this has come up in situations where, like, say I have like a red source and a Colonnade, I can activate attack and cast like a Lightning Helix. So really good land. Tectonic Edge, there's I think 2 kind of you want to play like about 2 colorless lands in this deck just to get a little bit more value. So you can play either Tech Edge or you can play Slayer, Stronghold, or Moorland Haunt, and some combination of those. I just went with Tech Edges because they're good in the mirror match. They let you kill Colonnades. They're good versus Tron decks. It lets you break up their Tron pieces. Sometimes you can also randomly screw your opponents. Like I had this happen versus a Birthing Pod player in round 1 where he had was stuck on land for a while. I pathed one of his guys when he only had 3 lands out. He goes up to 4, and I drew both Tech Edges. So so what you can do is you can target one of their lands, put the ability on the stack, target their second land, and then they're down to 2 lands from your Tech Edges. So sometimes that plays really good. So I like Tech Edge overall. It's a little bit more flexible in allowing you to like either defensively play or offensively play. In the semifinals, I hit a guy's breeding pool. Like I went had 5 mana, went guys Tech Edge your breeding pool. And then apparently I didn't know until after the game he commented he had a Thragtusk in his hand.
Oh.
And I didn't know about it, but that play matters.
Been great.
Too. Yeah. So those are the non-basic lands that actually kind of matter. The basics are in there because in Modern, you don't necessarily want to like use a Scalding Tarn to always get like a Steam Bench, because sometimes you want to be able to put a land into play untapped without taking 3 damage.
Sometimes you can't afford the damage.
Yeah. The other good thing about basic lands is because people are playing Path to Exile, it lets you get a land.
It doesn't make Path dead.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not for sure what Path Exile does, it removes a creature from the game, and the person who controlled that creature can search their library for a basic land and put it into play tapped.
Yeah.
And it specifically says basic as opposed to a basic, instead of saying like a forest or swamp. So if you're not running any basic lands, that Path to Exile just became that much better for your opponent.
Yeah. So that's why the basics are in there. So those are the lands that you're playing. Pretty conventional list, nothing really out of the ordinary. So.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump down to, we have a 1 of Cryptic Command.
Yeah, this is just a Miser's card. Last at the Salt Lake PTQ, I was playing Sword of War and Peace, which was fine, but it wasn't like super great or whatever. So Josh and I decided just to put a Miser's Cryptic Command in. It came up one time I drew it versus the mirror match, and all I did was tap down a Geist, but we were like racing each other back and forth, and it did kind of end up mattering. It might honestly just be better as like a third Electrolyze or like a third Remand or something like that. So it was okay, not like super great. But I mean, I don't think it's terrible to have a card like that in the deck. So yeah, so we just had the 1 Cryptic.
Okay, so we have a few cards. In the beginning of the video, we mentioned the things that people are familiar seeing in Standard. We have the Geist of Saint Traft, the Snapcaster Mages, and 3 Restoration Angels, which plenty of people playing at Friday Night Magic are familiar with at this point in time.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into some of these cards that some people may not be familiar with, such as Vendilion Click.
Vendilion Click is actually one of those really weird creatures. I think it's a really blue creature, I guess is a good way to put it, because like knowing when to use Vendilion Click and how to use it appropriately can be really difficult. When I first started playing with the card, a lot of times I would just you just go, I'm going to play it on their draw step after they draw their card, so I'm going to try and break up their plans or whatever. I'm finding that a lot of times it's almost better just to play it on their end of turn rather than their draw step. Because what that does is if you have a counterspell like a Mana Leak or Remand in your hand, you can pass with the counterspell. If they don't do something relevant, then you can play the click and get their card. This is really good versus the combo decks or decks without a lot of flying blockers, because it does provide a reasonable clock and does provide a little bit of disruption.
So in case you can't read what the card says, Vendilion Click is 2 blue mana, 1 colorless. It has flash and it flies. And when it enters the battlefield, you can look at their hand. You can choose a card from it, non-land card, right? Non-land card. Put it on the bottom of their deck, and then they get a draw.
Yeah, and sometimes the right way to use this guy is because it's target player. You can target yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you have, say you're in a really late position where you both have a ton of mana and you have a Mana Leak in your hand and it's effectively dead, you can bend the Mana Leak. Mm-hmm. Or one game I was playing versus Living End, and for some reason after game 2 he had boarded in Leyline of Sanctity. I'm not sure why, but that meant I couldn't target him with Click. I couldn't target him with burn spells. So instead, I was targeting myself and putting my burn spells on the bottom and just cycling my burn spells since they weren't going to do anything anyway. Yeah, because you're not going to kill the creatures with your burn spells. Sure. So you just want to get more cards that are relevant rather than cards that aren't doing anything.
Okay, so we have Remand. If you haven't seen this one, it's a 1 blue, 1 colorless counterspell. But the awkward thing about it, I don't say awkward, but one of the unique things about Remand is if you counter the spell, it actually goes back to the person's hand and you draw a card. So why would people want to play Remand over, let's say, a hard counterspell? What's the benefit here?
So there's a couple advantages to Remand. It's a really big tempo play. Generally, when you're on your turn 2 or whatever and you're passing with a counter spell, a lot of times you just want to snap counter whatever they do just for the tempo. You don't want them to get ahead, so you need to reset the pace of the game or whatever. Mm-hmm. So just being able to be all right, I'm going to Remand whatever you're doing just to buy myself a turn is generally perfectly acceptable. It replaces itself, which is good. There's a couple tricks to Remand in Modern. For example, when someone in the mirror match, if someone snapcasters a spell, say they snapcaster a Lightning Helix, if you Remand the spell that that they're casting with the Snapcaster ability, the spell actually still stays exiled and then goes back to their hand. Or sorry, doesn't go back to their hand. So the spell stays exiled and you still draw a card. So you're effectively like countering a spell and drawing a card rather than returning the card to their hand. Gotcha. So there's a little bit of value there. Another trick you can do with remand in Counterspell Wars is you can remand the spell that they are attempting to counter. So, for example, this came up in the semifinals where I had a remand, he knew I had a remand, and he had a remand, and I knew he had a remand. Yeah, so it was a very funny situation where we both had remands, we both knew we had remands. I top decked a Geist and had 5 mana, and he had like 8 or something like that. So I cast the Geist, and he went to remand my Geist, and instead of remanding his remand, I remand the Geist. So what happens is the Geist goes back to my hand, I draw a card off of my remand, and his remand fizzles, and he doesn't draw a card. So it's a really weird situation, but like it does come up, and it does get you a lot of extra value if you play it that way.
For sure. Okay, so then we have over here. Not too much to say about Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt's probably one of the oldest cards still being played in a modern style tournament.
Yeah, and these are Aaron's Lightning Bolts. These are some sweet unlimited Lightning Bolts, so they're pretty cool.
The Lightning Bolt, if you haven't seen it, it's just 1 red mana at an instant speed to do 3 damage to a target. And, simple and effective. Doesn't get much better.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll even do things like, you know, you'll bolt something, and then even if they don't have any creatures in play, you'll like do something like with 3 mana, you'll like play Snapcaster and then bolt them, like just bolt their face. So.
It's a big chunk of damage.
Yep.
Lightning Bolt's very effective. And then right next to it, newer is the Lightning Helix.
Yeah, so this is, think of this as like Searing Spear, except you gain 3 life, which is really sweet. So obviously, like in a lot of matchups where your life total matters, in the mirror match, this card's really good. Versus aggro decks, this card's really good. It kills a creature, you gain 3 life, and if you're Snapcastering it, like it's so much value. It's really, really good.
Okay, and then over here, is it Charmed? That's a new one. Versatile. It has 3 good modal abilities.
Yeah, I really like playing 2 of these because sometimes in some matchups like versus like Affinity or the new red-green Gruul aggro deck that's popping up, you just want like a ton of removal spells, right? So you're like, I have 4 bolts, 4 helixes, 4 paths, and then I want more removal, so I have Izzet Charms that kill like 2 toughness guys.
Yeah.
But then sometimes you hit matchups where they don't have a lot of creatures, so you want the ability to counter spells like Karns, or I'm trying to think of some of the other big ones. You can catch like a Birthing Pod with it sometimes, or like possibly a Liliana. So the flexibility for that is really nice. The looting doesn't come up as often. I don't even like looting when I'm slightly flooded just because you have Colonnade. So you want a lot of land in the deck to be able to activate Colonnades, but sometimes you're like, I have 9 lands in play, and I have 2 lands, and I've drawn 11 lands this game, so I'll just pitch them and draw 2 extra cards.
So being able to have the burn modal option, you know, viable in a lot of matchups, the counterspell option viable in a lot of matchups, and even if the looting one isn't always there, it's still a good one to have in case the situation arises.
Yeah,
not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. So I mean, this list isn't really. There's nothing really super unconventional. Like I said, I played 1 Cryptic Command. The biggest change was the original list that were doing well weren't playing Restoration Angel, so I just added 3 Restoration Angel and cut the other creatures, and Angel is really, 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 really strong. I actually, in the semifinals, I ambushed a Dark Confidant with it. Like he's just like, I top decked an Angel, had 4 mana, I'm like, go, and he's like, attack with my Confidant, I'm like, Angel, like, block your guy or whatever, and he just like stared at the Angel like, that's not good. So yeah, and it obviously interacts well with Geist, it lets you attack with Geist. Yeah,
so your guys doesn't get
it's the classic play in Standard, right? Where you're like, attack with my guys, hit you with the Angel token, and then Angel save my guys. All of a sudden, now you have 7 points of flying power in the air, and like when you have Bolt and Helixes, like they're
really close to death.
Yeah, they're dying really fast at that point.
And there's still good interactions to have with Snapcaster Mage and Vidillion Click if the situation arises.
Yep, yeah. I even had one situation. I lost the game, but like I put a read on him that he had Lightning Bolt because he just ran his Geist into my with a bunch of mana with Colonnade, and I actually had enough mana to activate Colonnade. So what I did was I activated Colonnade, blocked his Angel instead of the Geist because I figured he had Bolt, and then played Angel and saved the Colonnade. So then next turn I have 2 blockers, and I'm only at 5 life, so I don't die to Bolt. But he ended up having a Path to Exile, so I lost anyway. So,
but the play made sense.
Yeah, but the play was good if you only have Bolt. So,
and so we have a 2 of Mana Leaks because obviously, like you said, they get slightly less desirable as the game goes on. But they're great for the early
Yeah,
game.
they're fine early. Sometimes you will like be like, all right, I draw a Munchkin to leak your guy, and then you'll draw a Snapcaster, and then be like Snapcaster leak. But yeah, sometimes you draw them, and they're just the most awkward things ever, and you're just like, I can't do anything with this card. Especially in Modern, when you're playing for Path to Exiles, you're playing versus decks like Tron, where they get to a point where they have so much mana that like mana leak doesn't matter. I remember one time I was playtesting a little bit versus Tron, and they cast a Pyroclasm with like 9 mana or something ridiculous, but they only had 1 red source. So I remanded it, and they couldn't cast it again because they had no other red mana. But if it was a leak, they just would have been like, all right, I'll pay 3 mana or whatever. So yeah, it's fine, but like I don't like it's a card I would not play 4. Maybe 3, but I think 2 is right. I mean, if I was gonna play a third 2 mana counterspell, it'd be remand. So.
Okay, so that's the main deck. We're going to quickly jump over to sideboard and go over that and what it's built to do and get that set up for you.